Welcome to today's Table Talks. My name is Scott Kappelman, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts again. We've got Tyce Lawbinger on the far end of the table from me. Tyce, how are you?
Ready for the week to be over.
Really?
Yeah. Or just
it's only Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, I guess once I get past Wednesday, I'll be good.
Yeah, we've had a busy front end of the week,
and
I think if we get past lunch tomorrow, it's going to improve dramatically.
I think it will. Yeah.
That's right. So, Clark, how are you? We've got Clark McGehee in the middle.
That's right. I share similar sentiments with Tyce there, but I don't know how much easier my week's going to get after Wednesday, but it's okay.
Yeah, you have the hard part on Sunday with teaching twice.
Yeah,
so.
I'm teaching twice on Sunday, and then just a lot of reading for seminary. But
so you're teaching Cross Point University, and you're doing the college worship.
Yeah, for future reference, I think we're gonna try to schedule things that it doesn't end up that way. But we thought this made the most sense when we first scheduled it, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't even know if we could have changed anything really. But it's okay.
All right.
Tyce will have a couple weeks that he has to do that too. So
yeah,
it's just how the cookie crumbles, I suppose.
And we're actually having to re-record this particular video.
That is
had
true.
About 25 to 30 minutes worth of material done, and somewhere along the way, Clark, your microphone went out.
Yeah.
And we didn't catch it, so we're having to re-record this today.
A little bit of a bummer.
That's okay. We've got good content, though. We're going to make up.
Yeah, we do.
And maybe even make it better than the first episode that you'll never see watching this from home. So we are in a 3-part series, and the question that we've been asking is, where do you need to send your children to school? And in our first episode, our question was, should Christian parents send or choose to homeschool their children? And so if you didn't see that, go back to YouTube. We've had a lot of people already view that, about 53 people. And at least that's the number we most recently saw. And then right now, today's episode is going to be, should Christian parents choose to send their children to Christian schools?
Yep.
And then the next episode, which will come in a couple of weeks, will be, should Christian parents choose to send their children to public school? Now, we want to make this statement up front. We are not here to recommend one or the other of any of these choices. Our job is simply to discuss the pros and cons and some advantages, disadvantages, and just some things you ought to be thinking about as a parent. But we want to leave that decision up to you 100% as to what you do with your children, because they are God's gift to you. And so we're just trying to provide a well-rounded discussion on each of these particular areas. So today we're going to dive into the Christian school concept. And I want to start by asking, were there any Christian schools where either one of you grew up? Because I know we announced in the last episode we all three went to public school. Mm-hmm. But were there any Christian schools available where you were growing up?
There was no evangelical Christian schools where we grew up. There were a lot of Catholic schools and a couple Lutheran schools, but none that I'm aware of that were evangelical.
Is that pretty common across the board in Missouri? Would there be more Catholic and Lutheran schools in general than Christian schools?
Probably. Besides like in the city, big Christian schools, they just all the country schools. They were all like a St. Pius X. I think there was like 3 St. Pius schools.
Okay.
So just in the vicinity of where we'd play basketball.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. What about down your way, Clark? Any Christian schools?
Not really that were practical to go to. There was one about 30-ish minutes away, but within 30 minutes, there was no Christian schools really where we were. So I don't think it would have been practical for anybody from where I was from to send. I don't know anybody that where I was from went to a Christian school. So what about in Holka?
Not in Holka. We did not have any Christian schools. I don't think there were any in our area that I'm aware of. Now, at the time when I was going to school, the federal government had not mandated kindergarten for public schools. And so a lot of churches had a 4-year-old kindergarten or a 5-year-old kindergarten. And so I know there were, the church that my dad pastored in Holka had a 5-year-old kindergarten until the public school was given a kindergarten. And at that point, because the government mandated it, of course, there were no children left to go to our school. And so that was the only type of Christian school that we had, was a kindergarten. All right, do you know any children or friends that went to Christian schools?
Yeah, one of my best friends went to a Christian school growing up, Elijah.
Was it a Lutheran or a Catholic?
No, his was evangelical. Yeah, he said he enjoyed it. It was smaller than any public school that I've known, but he said he was taught. So
okay,
yeah.
Clark, did you have some friends?
I did not growing up that went there, but I have since met people that have been to a Christian school, and I've heard good things from these people that said they went to a Christian school. And I know I have a couple youth actually in the program at Crosspoint that are going to a Christian school, so they all seem to like it a lot. But I didn't have any friends growing up, no.
My main connection to a Christian school was here in Starkville. We have a Starkville Christian school. Mr. Randy Whitbeck and Miss Lynn have been over that school for quite some time. And in fact, their daughter Rachel goes to our church. But I was their first basketball coach, junior high and high school boys, when they started their basketball program. And I had a great experience, enjoyed coaching for them, and would have stayed longer had it not grown in its responsibilities and they were ready to move into somebody that could be there pretty much every day for practice and add more games to the schedule. And it was just more than I could bear. So, but it was a fun experience. I had a great time.
Yeah.
And we've had several students from our church, whether they were children or youth, who've gone to Starkville Christian School. So that's my closest experience.
Right.
Again, I didn't know anybody growing up.
Did you find it was less common whenever you were growing up, or they were still pretty common, but...
No, I just don't know. I just don't know of any Christian schools from
Really?
my era of time. I'm sure there were some, but I don't know where they were or how far away they were from us. Now, we were kind of sheltered people, being from Hulk.
Yeah.
we got the sunshine once a week, so
Right.
they
There we
piped
go.
it in.
That's funny.
Okay, so we've got some scripture that we've used in each episode. Obviously, Deuteronomy 6:4-9 is where parents were charged to teach their children to love the Lord, to know His teachings, and to obey Him. That's a very familiar passage that a lot of people would probably recognize. Then if you move to the New Testament, Acts 2:42, that's where the first followers of Jesus devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. So there's a little bit of spiritual education going on, or Christian education going on, if you will, in that particular location. And then I had written down Acts 17:11, the Bereans, when Paul came through the area of Berea and shared the gospel with them, they had enough background in the Jewish faith to go and study and verify what he was preaching. So I would kind of call that, in a similar vein, Christian education. Do y'all have any other verses? I just want to hit those real quick.
Verses, not really. Well, I'm sure there is a verse. I just don't remember where it is. Maybe Acts 22, where Paul talks about he learned under Gamaliel. Yep. So I think that's Acts 22. Could be wrong.
Yes, it is Acts 22. I actually have that in my notes.
Wow,
That's
the Holy
impressive.
Spirit is so good. You know, bring the verses to mind that you don't even know.
Yeah, so that would have been a Jewish school system. Gamaliel, one of the more famous teachers of the day, and Paul did study at his feet and mentions that, I think, more than once, but at least once. So, all right, let's get into the kind of meat of what we want to talk about. Why do you think parents choose to send their children to a Christian school? Any thoughts on that?
I can maybe start with the negatives,
Okay.
which is, we'll end on the positive, so maybe that's a good thing. But a couple negatives as to why parents could send their kids to a Christian school is because they are a little controlling, maybe. They want to, know that their child is being raised up in a biblical way and are afraid of them not being able to do that at the home. And I think that even goes farther, and I remember mentioning this in our first recording of this, actually, but a lot of times parents can be afraid that they can't teach biblically well enough, so they kind of put that on the school. And I've seen that happen with some people that I do know. Is I think they're a little self-conscious that they're not going to be able to teach quite as well as they could biblically, so they actually end up sending their kids to that Christian school to hopefully make up for what they might be feeling that they're lacking.
And that was part of why I wanted to go to Deuteronomy 6. I didn't read the passage itself, but it's chapter 6, verses 4-9, because I do think parents have been given that responsibility to train their children spiritually. And I've seen the same situation where the parents, in some regards, handed off Monday through Friday to the school the responsibility of spiritual training, and then they expected the church to cover it on Sunday. And so there was only really one day
Right.
where they were kind of responsible for setting some kind of Christian example. So
And
I've seen that.
I'll add a caveat here. If you are listening and you send your kids to a Christian school, we're not saying that all people that do that are doing that at all.
No.
But it is just that some people, that is the bad. There's good and bad here.
Yeah,
and
right.
that's of the bad. So.
Because I think everything has a bubble. We talked about homeschool. There's a homeschool bubble. There's a Christian school bubble. And ultimately, within that bubble of Christian school, it's a school, first off. And so I think most parents understand when they send their kid, it's not for biblical training, but they're going to learn math and science maybe in a biblical worldview. And so there's just not, to stay accredited, there's not much time to just be in Bible class. It's not, don't think you're sending your kid to a Bible college. They're learning math, science, history, English. Like most of the time is spent in class.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that is true.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's maybe a myth that some people have in their minds, that all day it's going to be studying the Bible, but you still have to learn the basics.
Yeah.
Math, science, English, history, like you said. I think that's a really good point.
That is a good point. I agree with that. I think that is a myth for sure.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? I've got a few more, but I want to let y'all go first.
Why people
might send their child to a Christian school?
I think there's two sides to the coin, but I think sports are a big one. I think part of it could just be public schools. Let's be honest, most funding comes from sports. Taxpayers obviously is the biggest funding, but if you have a good football team, there's going to be a lot more money coming into your school. Or same with basketball, and I know that amplifies in college even more. But for public schools, they take pride in their sports, and private Christian schools maybe not as much. And so if a family is like, I just don't want my kid to be at a school that only cares if you can throw a ball far or hard or shoot a ball well, then they might send them to a Christian school. Or the flip side of that is maybe my kid's not good enough to play at a public school, and so I can pay money and guarantee them a spot on a private school.
I had that in my list, that there might be, I think I had that in my list, that there could be children that can't participate in some of the activities at the public school. Maybe they're not, as you said, athletic enough, and the Christian school would provide that opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise.
But there's two sides to it, because some parents could care less. And
yeah, that's right.
Christian school is the better way to go for that.
Yeah. Other thoughts, Clark? Or?
Well, I do have another negative one.
Okay.
I'm by no means am I just blatantly against Christian schooling, but it is just, these were the two that were on my mind. But I think sometimes parents can sort of want to segregate their child from diversity, and not even just ethnic diversity, but any kind of diversity. It could be those people that live down the street go to this school, so I want to send my kid to this school. And sometimes it can be ethnic reasons, but I definitely see that. And that's a really sad thing, because really that's what creates well-rounded people, is people that are exposed to everybody, all types of people,
Yeah.
But I do think that sometimes that is a little bit of an unfortunate side that can happen to Christian schooling, private schooling in general, not just Christian, but just private schooling. So
No, I think I have another positive one though would be smaller class sizes.
Yes.
That's just a big thing. So Christy White, who used to be a college student here, is now teaching down on the coast, and she talks about how a majority of her job is classroom management and less teaching. And not to say there's not a lot of classroom management involved in private Christian school, but just classes are smaller. And I think parents have a confidence of the other kids around them that they're going to be better behaved. Not to say public school kids can't be, but just more better behaved kids. And so they can be confident in the smaller class, and that teachers can really focus on the lesson and less on dealing with other kids. So
I think that's a really good point. And most of the Christian schools, I guess I'm using Starkville Christian and a few others, their class size is 6, 10, 12, maybe 14 kids. And my wife teaches at a private school here in town. Our kids went to the public school, but she teaches at a private school here in town, and she's got 21 this year, and she had 3 or one that has moved away that brought her number down to 20. Then she had a couple out last week that were sick. So she was down to like 17 students. And she said to me, you cannot imagine as a teacher how much easier 17 is to manage than 21. Well, then if you drop that on down to 12, you can really see a difference in the classroom management.
that's like my college.
Yeah, that's right. Your college was very small. So that size makes it so inviting for the student and the teacher, because they can get a lot done.
Yeah.
it makes it inviting for both. That's the case I was going to make too.
Yeah.
Like, it really is nice as a student being in seminary now it is nice as a student to be in smaller classes, or even
compared to Mississippi State when you were a student there.
Right, exactly. Now, some classes at State, whenever you get a little more technical and a little more like specifically, this is your field and nobody else is doing it, they have small classes.
Right.
But I mean, when I was in Calculus 1, it was 200 students in there. And I could not tell you my teacher's name, and I probably couldn't have while I was in the class.
Yeah.
So,
but with that, I think I made this point last time we did the podcast, but I think it's important is because it's smaller classroom size, teachers are not doing it for the money. There's not much money being paid for those teachers. And so you can be confident as a parent sending your kid to a Christian school that they want to be an educator. It's not that this is my fallback job and it pays well, or I'm doing this because of the benefits of being a Mississippi teacher, because they don't fall into that. And so there's a confidence that this teacher cares about my child and cares about their education.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to go along with that, and this may finish us up on the positives, I mean, the reasons why people choose to send their children to a Christian school is the smaller school environment also makes it more accessible for the parents to be involved. And I don't mean they're trying to control what's happening at the Christian school. I'm saying that in a most positive way. They can go to their children's activities. The school may invite them to come at lunch and go to lunch with their child once a week. So there are a lot of avenues, I think, that the Christian school may provide for parents to plug in and be active in the educational role as the child moves through the system. So, all right. What are the benefits? And this is kind of moving away from why, but what are the benefits, perhaps, of a child going to a Christian school? Any thoughts on that?
Cook, you want to go?
Yeah, I do think that, although it does not replace what should happen at the home, a lot of times you can have some more confidence that what they're learning at school is like being built upon what you're already teaching them at home. So they go to school, maybe even hear about exactly what y'all were just talking about at home biblically, the next day, because every class is not biblical, and there's going to be a lot of days they sit in math and they might not hear anything about the Lord, but they are going to, seminars that have, I don't know why I can't remember the name, like devotions
Chapels.
and that kind of thing. Thank you. Chapels.
Going
to chapel. They do have a couple Bible classes, so the parent might have confidence that they are, building upon what they're already teaching them at home. So
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Tyce, you got anything else?
I mean, not really. I think the reasons for sending, I don't think I have any more than that. For a kid, I mean, again, it's a bubble, and so the kid only knows what they have, and so they've only gone to private school. I don't think they're going to have any different experience than a public school kid, and so I don't know. Yeah, I think
the only other thing I thought about is perhaps the Christian school might have the same discipline philosophy as the parents.
Oh yeah, true.
Because you could get into a situation perhaps if you've got Christian parents and their kids go to the public school might have a different discipline system. Most of the Christian schools that I'm aware of still use a
paddle.
Yeah, Pastor Scott's talking about whoopings right now.
Yeah,
you can just say it.
Hey, I will say, I went to public school, and I wasn't in public school that very long ago, but they still paddled where I was at.
Well, in Mississippi, I don't think that's as normal now as it used to be, and I'll talk about that in the next episode.
Yeah.
But most of the Christian schools I'm aware of have a pretty stringent form of discipline. They don't play around.
Come on.
And it would probably match the home environment far more.
So Rob's laughing a little too much behind the camera right now.
I think he is. He's having a good time on that one.
He is.
All right, so what about potential detriments? We don't want to go too far without getting a few detriments. We've talked about some of those, but let's go a little further with that. Any thoughts along those lines that you want to use?
Growing up, I do not see this as much here. If any, I don't see it in any of my kids here that are at Cross Point. But I tell you what, the notorious worst kids to be around were the private Christian school kids where I was from. Like, you didn't want to play basketball against them. You didn't want to hang out with them outside of school. I mean, there was just, everyone knew what was going on. It was just, they were just notoriously private Christian school kids, know.
I would say on a stereotypical level, that's true. But I know a couple people that shine through. I agree. A couple Christian schooling people that were I'm like, that's a good guy.
Yeah.
Great guy. But
okay, well, the two things that I have, one of those may go along with what you're saying. I do see sometimes that students who have been in a Christian school and they go to a church regularly with their families, they may rebel because they've been in such a structured environment that when they finally get free, they just go crazy wild.
Yeah.
And so I've seen that happen more than once, and I think that's a real caution that we need to keep in mind. The other one that I'd written down is because of overexposure, they may be a little apathetic toward Christianity in general because they go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, then they may go to chapel once or twice during the week. They have a Bible class every day, and they may just get to a point where it's so common to them and they've heard it so much, it's hard for them to really hear the gospel. And you talked a little bit about this in your college experience that people dreaded going to chapel.
So let's make a clarification first. Overexposure is not bad. Like, we are called to be dwelling on Scripture day and night, like to be in constant prayer. It's constant forced exposure where you are not the one seeking it out.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit can work through that. Like, most of the time you get called out on something, whether reading scripture in a sermon when you're not expecting it, like you're not looking for it. But it is the overexposure of forced Christianity where it can be like, man, this is just not fun. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm fine on my own. It just makes me not want to go. It makes my worship sour. It's just not enjoyable time. And I don't think the Lord is getting glorified by that in any way, because I'm not there for him. I'm there because I have to be there.
Right.
So
it's a part of the policy that you have to be there.
Yes. We had to scan our cards. It was a whole attendance thing, and you knew when you were getting close to your attendance, and then you got to watch them online if you go over or whatever. And so then if you have to watch them online, that's even more forced. Now, that's college. I know the public school is different, but it's hard.
Any other thoughts, Clark, on this?
Just one more detriment might be that you need to look into the educational experience if you're going to be a parent, because I have interacted with people who have told me that they've kind of had a less than standard educational experience, just as far as like the content that they learned. Like, they're like, the teacher I have really isn't any good, but it's all they can get at this particular school. So I would say and I'm getting into the next question, but if you're a parent, look for that kind of thing before you send your kid to a private school, and like talk to previous parents and say, hey, what did you think about this?
Which is something I'm looking forward to talking about in the next episode. And not that every public school is great education, but
right. So the final question I think I have two more. One, I don't know that we're going to get into a whole lot because it's controversial, but the previous question I do want to get to is, we know that a Christian school can create a little bit of a bubble environment. So what could we say to parents? If you choose to send your child to a Christian school, you need to have some kind of plan that might allow them to get exposure outside the bubble that would prepare them for adulthood. So any advice or thoughts on how that could be done, even as a parent sends their child to a Christian school?
I have one. Clark, do you want to go first, though? Or if you don't have anything, I can go.
Well, you can go ahead.
Okay, well, I think getting in sports is just huge for kids, but not necessarily school sports, city sports. I'm not talking like pay your $1,500 fee to play AAU, travel AAU. Like, city sports are good.
Just rec leagues.
Just rec leagues, like maybe a $50 fee at most to get in. So stuff like that, because with that, there's still structure. It's not like you're going to get a job and now your kid's just doing whatever. The boss just expects you to get the job done. But like sports, there is community involved in that. Your kid has an opportunity to learn how to be a teammate. Or if not a teammate, let's say they play tennis or golf or something, you're still interacting with people and what it means to cheer other people on. And then there's a coach involved that has no ties to school of what he can and can't say. He's not your child's parent, so he doesn't feel as empathetic. Not to say they're just going to get a coach just going to rail your kid, but like someone that's, hey, you can do better. Just constructive criticism, being a coach, what a coach should do. Like, no, this was wrong. This is how you need to do better. And that's just huge for the kid. Also, sports, I think all kids should be active. I don't think you should just allow your kid just to sit at home and do nothing outside of school. And so that's just a great way for your kid to also be active and find an enjoyment in something outside of its screen, and they're getting coached. So.
Ooh, I like that.
Call them out.
You had one more last episode that we've lost. The episode.
Yeah, can you?
Okay, so
can you start my thought?
You also said that when they get to be a certain age, they should get a job.
Oh yeah.
When they're about 14 or 15. That the parents should help them get a job,
Yeah.
where they're forced to work with other people, other adults.
Yeah, no, I agree.
They're
So
not like
I know
that.
I just talked
You
about
agree with
maybe not get a job early when I was talking about kids, but it is important to get a job. It is important for them to learn, hey, this is what it means to be in the real world, experience what it means for like, hey, this person does not care about me because I am making their sandwich. Not to call Clark out because he's a Subway worker, but like there are people that will come to like anything that is customer service and be like, you don't mean anything to me, and that can be very shocking for people.
Oh, I saw some crazy stuff at Subway.
No, there's some people that just like they think they own you, and it could be good for your kids to learn that, and also just learn, hey, this is what it means to be on time. This is what it means to work with other people that aren't Christians. This is what it means to work with other ethnicities. Not to say that there aren't other ethnicities in the Christian schools, but they're just not as vast as you would see at a public school. So there's just a lot of benefits to getting a job early and just teaching responsibility. So
I thought that was a good point last time as well. So, all right, the last question I have, and this is not going to make really much headway in today's video. Do you think churches should get into the Christian school business?
No. I think there's better ways church can use their finances.
I would agree with you, Tyce. Clark, you got thoughts on it?
I don't want to necessarily, but I'm not against it, honestly. I think this goes so much deeper. But we as a church, here we go, in the podcast on this statement right here.
Snap.
But I think we as a church have allowed the government to do a lot of what the church is actually called to do.
I agree with that.
I don't
So-
disagree that the government is doing too much that the church should be doing, but I don't know about education.
I don't either. And that's why I say I'm such a hypocrite right now because I said that, but I'm like, I don't want to do church, school.
It's not
but
something I would want to be a part of. I've seen it
Yeah.
done really poorly, and
Yeah.
I've seen it done really well.
I've seen it both ways. But I just think, what's your mission of opening a school as a church, and who are you serving? Because if you're just going to be serving your children, the parents at your church, then just give your children's ministry a bigger budget. Like,
Yes.
don't pour all your money into a school and don't serve the community, but just serve your parents. Like, just give your kids' ministry a bigger budget, and they can go do some more things.
Yeah.
So
I personally don't want to be the pastor of a church that has a school.
I don't really either.
It just seems like it could get into a lot of Pandora's boxes that can never be closed. And
Yeah.
it just takes away from to me, the mission of sharing the gospel, making disciples, equipping the saints to do the work of ministry. And
then ultimately, you will get, to Clark's point, involved in, because you have to be accredited in some way. So then you will have government involvement in your church and what you teach and what you learn. So there is a lot.
yeah. So we'll just leave it at that
Yeah.
point. So we hope today's video has given you some things to think about Christian schools. Again, we're not trying to promote homeschooling over Christian school, over public school. We're just trying to cover all three particular areas where you could consider they could be considerable options for you to send your children to. And we hope this has been a helpful discussion. Do come back and join us for the last of these three parts as we talk about public school, and then go back and watch all three to have a discussion with your spouse and figure out what's best for your child. All right, we hope you have a great day. Come back and join us for the next Table Talks.